Hi, my name is Donald Chakeres. I'm a professor at The Ohio State University, and this is a lecture on the Harmonic Neutron Hypothesis. This is a follow-up lecture to the first one where I discuss the question, do the mathematical criteria of the Harmonic Neutron Hypothesis actually define observable physical phenomenon? What I'm going to do is share with you a list of demonstrations of how the hypothesis is valid in the physical domain, and this is true conceptually, mathematically, and computationally. I think the results are pretty exciting and downright amazing. First, I'm going to talk a little about the Lorentz factors. Lorentz factors are the equations that Einstein used to describe relativity related to the change in distance and time and matter. So this is a very obtuse issue. But if you look at the transformations, they're actually related to the equation of 1 divided by the definition of a circle in a Cartesian plane. So this is completely related to a circular relationship. If you go in and you plot this inside of the model, you end up with a circle. This whole model, if you recall, is defined by the properties of a circle. So everything within relativity is actually defined exactly inside the definition at the very basis of the model. What are the linear unit steps of electromagnetic energy that emerge from matter spontaneously? This is called black body radiation. This is a graph of it from Wikipedia. Well, those are related to the integer steps of 1 Hertz times Planck's constant, 2 Hertz times Planck's constant, and 3 Hertz times Planck's constant. So this is just a consecutive integer series, exactly what we were talking about before. If you go and look at the wavelengths of black body radiation, you take the speed of light times 1 second, and you divide it by 1, then you divide it by 2, then you divide it by 3. Well, that's exactly what we were talking about before. These are just harmonic fractions. So these two critical things in quantum mechanics are exactly the definition of the model. What are the linear unit steps for elemental matter? Well, the neutron is abbreviated as that n superscript 0. And assume that I'm talking about the frequency equivalent of the neutron in this lecture. So elemental matter is related to integer numbers of neutrons or nucleons. 1 neutron is 1 neutron. 2 nucleons is deuterium. 3 nucleons is tritium. And 4 nucleons is helium, and you can go on. So here's another example of where you just have a consecutive integer series. What is the transformation ratio between the black body radiation and elemental matter? Well, that transformation ratio is the fundamental frequency of the whole system. Transformation of energy to matter. Where does that occur? Well, if you start counting up on the black body radiation, when you get to the frequency of the neutron, this is when it's possible to take a gamma ray and turn it into a neutron. And this literally happens in pair formation. So this is not a theoretical concept. This is a true physical concept. So the global system is scaled by that fundamental frequency, and that is related to the frequency of the neutron. Why is the frequency of the neutron equal to 2.27 times 10 to the 23rd? It's a very odd number. Why does that ratio happen there? Well, inside of the Harmonic Neutron Hypothesis, I'm not going to go into the details, but the fundamental frequency raised to 39 divided by 1155, and 1155 is the product of those 4 primes, has to equal pi. So if you flip that equation around, you can solve for what the fundamental frequency is, and that turns out to be 4.3 times 10 to the 23rd. So I'm giving you the frequency of the neutron in the absence of any physical data, because it has to be like that based on the math, purely on the math. Now, what are the global hierarchy scaling between the fundamental forces? And those are gravitational kinetic energy, electromagnetic, strong forces, and black holes. Well, if you look at the exponent of 1 of the frequency of the neutron, well, that's the neutron. If you look at the 0, that is the electromagnetic energy unit of Planck's constant. -1 turns out to be 2 times the gravitational binding energy of the electron and hydrogen. That's kind of amazing, but it's true. And if you take the exponent of 2, that is the elemental matter that forms a black hole. It has to be that based on its Compton radius. What's the global internal organization of the fundamental constants? The only possible partial fraction based on 2 primes is 2 divided by 3. The composite is 2 times 3 or 6. Therefore, the internal organization is based on pairs of 3s, or you can have all of these different fractions. So is this really the internal organization where there are 6 quarks and 6 antiquarks? There are 3 up quarks and 3 down quarks. There are 1/6 of the quarks that have charmness. 3 of the leptons are charged, 3 of the leptons are neutral. The valence quark charges are 1/3 and 2/3. Boson transformations always occur in pairs, which is 2. And weak force transformations are always in triplets, 3. So if you go looking for this pattern, this is throughout physics. Why is it like that? It's because this is the only possibility based on the fact that it's a partial fraction series and it's primes. What's the global relative scaling of the fundamental constants? The other ones are going to be related to the partial fractions, the frequency of neutron raised to 1 plus or minus 1 over n. This is a form of resonance again. This explains why is it that when you go looking at the fundamental constants, they all cluster around the neutron. There are many, many, many of them as you get closer and closer to the neutron, and then they break away and they get less and less and less frequent. It's almost like looking at the planets, and they're all clustered around the sun, and as you go farther out, they're fewer and fewer and fewer. This explains that pattern perfectly. So let's go in and look at some of these global scaling issues related to the primes. You take the number 2, that's cosmic background radiation. That is the energy that you see out in space everywhere. Take the number 3, that's the Rydberg constant, which is related to the ionization energy of the electron in hydrogen. 5 is the Bohr radius. 7 is the electron. These define hydrogen. 3 out of the first 4 primes define hydrogen. That seems kind of odd, but that's 100% true. Let's take the next prime. That's the down quark. That is defining the nucleus. 11, that's the fine structure constant. That is what is combining all of these into a unified system. And we take 11 again, that's the Higgs boson. So as you go through this series, I've listed off what are all the values related to these different fundamental constants. And this is exactly like the periodic chart. In the periodic chart, you cannot have an element that is 2.56 of a neutron. It's either 1 neutron or 2 neutrons or 3 neutrons or 4 neutrons. In this system, it's exactly the same thing. You never find a constant unless it's associated with a valid partial fraction. Let's go back to the question of the ratio of gravitational and electromagnetic energy. Well, if you look at the number, it's pretty gigantic. It's 1.8 times 10 raised to the 101st power. Well, if you just take this simple equation, 2 times the frequency of a neutron raised to 1 plus 2/3 plus 4/5 plus 6/7, you end up with 1.9 times 10 to the 101st power. How is it possible that you can start with that one number, throw in a couple integers, and out pops this number that nobody has any idea in the slightest why it's scaled like that? This is the reason why it's scaled like that. It has to be because of the number imperatives. What's the maximum energy of a cosmic ray? If you measure it experimentally, it's 3 times 10 to the 20th electron volts. How can you possibly predict that from this model? Super simple. The neutron frequency raised to 3 divided by 2 equals 4.5 times 10 to the 20th power. This prediction is more accurate than the existing one. So this is super simple and super on the money. I believe the hypothesis is confirmed. It is true that starting with a few simple mathematical tenets related to the pure number properties of a finite integer series, all of the observational physical manifestations are accurately, conceptually, and computationally defined in a unified harmonic system. It seems kind of amazing that you can start out with such a simple number pattern, look at what are the mathematical implications of that pattern from a logical standpoint, project them forward, and what you end up with is the physical world. Numbers dominate. That's why the world is the way it is, not because of physical reasons, but purely because of number reasons. I hope you enjoyed this talk. If you want more information, then go to theneutronsymphony.com or donald.chakeres@osumc.edu. Thank you very much.